Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronnebaum. It's been a while, I know. We're still trying to get things back on our feet. A lot of things have been happening over the past few weeks, and not just in football. Life has gotten in the way a little bit, but we're back, and we're ready to talk some Dolphins football. Bye week just went by. See what I did there? And then you have Jay Ajayi just literally running over everybody all of a sudden. Who knew he could do a great Marshawn Lynch impression? Or should I say Ricky Williams? Do I even dare make that comparison? Because it almost seems like I'm going to be jinxing him with that. But there's going to be plenty to talk about now that we've been off for a little while. And we're going to be bringing in our friend Matt Barbato of New York Jet Fuel to talk the upcoming game on Sunday. The Dolphins face a real test against the New York Jets. They have a very efficient run defense, and while their passing defense leaves a lot to be desired, that run defense is going to make things very difficult for Jay Ajayi. So this may very well turn into a Ryan Tannehill game, which depending on your feelings of him, it's either going to be a great opportunity for him to show that he still has it, or it's going to be an opportunity to say, I told you so, because Tannehill still didn't get it done without help. So we're gonna see what happens there. Chad, since we're getting our show ready to go again, why don't you give us a very, very quick debriefing on what you expect from New York?
Well, the Jets, more on beyond just the game strategy, they're in a little bit of turmoil in general because they've struggled with the quarterback position. They actually spent all offseason trying to get Fitzpatrick in there, and he was dragging his feet for more money, and finally they paid Fitzpatrick, and he's went in there, and he's really struggled to the point that they pulled him for Geno Smith, and then Geno gets hurt, and now Fitzpatrick's back in there. So there's a lot of a turmoil in the New York Jets organization, in particular with the quarterback position. So with that being said, I think there's going to be a heightened amount of pressure on the Jets for this game to try to have an efficient performance on the offensive side of the football. And I think that's where the best opportunity lies for the Dolphins to really put some pressure on him. If they can get an early mistake maybe out of Fitzpatrick, I think that could really rattle the Jets up a little bit offensively. On the Dolphins side of the ball, I would have thought Jay Ajayi would have did what he did to the Steelers and the Bills, but both of those teams were a bit banged up, and we are probably going to face the best front that we'll play all year with the Jets. They have a very talented defensive line, and that's really going to dictate what happens with the Dolphins. Are they going to still be able to move the ball on the ground against the Jets defensive line, or are they not? And that's a tall order. The Dolphins offensive line is healthy, but that'll be the key matchup. I do think that both secondaries still have some issues, and throwing the football will probably be appealing. But which unit's going to establish line of scrimmage? And so I don't know really what to expect out of Adam Gase. I don't expect that he'll run as many two tight end sets and try to pound the football at the Jets, but with that being said, they've been so effective at it the last 2 weeks, it's hard to not try to do that either. So I do think as a prediction standpoint, it'll ultimately depend on how well Ryan Tannehill plays. I don't think Miami is going to just run over the Jets defensive line. They're just too talented. So it's going to come down to, will Miami be able to exploit the Jets secondary and get some points on the board? Because I think the Jets are not in a position where they want to be having to throw the football to play catch up with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So to me, that's the key of the game. Can Miami successfully throw the football or pass first to set up some of the runs on the Jets and put the Jets offense in a position where they can't play conservative football, make the Jets have to throw the football?
You made some good points there, Chad, and now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring in our good friend Matt Barbato from New York Jet Fuel. We're going to talk some Jets. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, guys. It's good to talk to you again. I feel like Week 9 is way too long.
Yeah.
For the first Jets-Dolphins meeting. I memean, I feel like they got to move it up. First 5-6 weeks of the year, I think, is more appropriate.
Absolutely. It's been like way too long. It feels like all the division games are being stuffed into the end of the year for some reason. Maybe they saw the Dolphins suddenly making a surge and they're like, no, we're going to put the Bills and the Jets and the Patriots in your way.
And I think isn't the second game on a Saturday night?
Is it?
I think it is, and that's not fun for anyone.
No. If it is a Saturday night football game, then that's an awful thing to do. And honestly, like I'm just gonna go into overall football for just a brief moment here. Does anybody else getting tired of Thursday night football and Sunday night football and Monday night football? Is anybody else getting tired of it?
I never get tired of
I'm
football.
tired of Thursday.
I think they're oversaturating a little bit with the games. I mean, I know they're trying to make it so the audiences have more ability to view it, but it's an interesting topic right now. You know, there's a lot of statistics being evaluated right now, whether it's because of more people are streaming or whether the actual fan base is down, because the numbers have been down for the primetime network games. And so that's something I think that the NFL has tried to play off a little bit, but it is concerning to the NFL that their numbers are declining. And I think they're trying to get a clear understanding of why that is.
Some people are blaming the elections, and I'm just thinking, nah. I mean, it's a nice try, though, but I don't think people would rather watch Trump and Hillary go at it than watch football. It's just a simple matter of what I'm watching just isn't fun anymore.
I mean, that's a good excuse for, through November, through next Tuesday, but, you know, I can understand where maybe the debates have cut in, because I think they've played games on 2 debates. So I can see where that could cut in, but I mean, that's only an excuse you can use for so long. I mean, I liked back in the day where it was, once Thanksgiving came around, you started seeing the Thursday night games weekly, rather than, you know, doing it for the first 10, 12 weeks now, and continuing that into the season. You know, I just think it's overkill. I think that's the problem, and I think Thursday night games in particular are what's wrong, because these teams don't have enough time to prepare. And I don't know if the Dolphins played a Thursday night game already this year, right? I think they played that was the Bengals game, right?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that was just a terrible game, and it was just I mean, now I think it was like a really low scoring game, and the Bengals could have stepped on their throats multiple times and couldn't. It's just, and the Jets. I was surprised the Jets-Bill game week 2 was as exciting as it was on Thursday night. I just think it's overkill. I think if they went back to the traditional model of Thanksgiving marks the start of weekly Thursday night games, and then you sprinkle in Saturday games too for fun, I think that's just a better way to go about it.
And by the way, Matt, you are correct. The second game against the Jets in December 17th, it is a Saturday night, 8:25, and then the Dolphins actually have another Saturday game then a week later against the Bills.
Well, that's Christmas Eve, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Christmas Eve.
They're playing them all on Christmas. Yeah, because Christmas is on a Sunday this year, so I think the entire league is playing on Christmas Eve, Saturday, this season, which is really bizarre.
That's awful. My gosh, go home to your families. My God.
And the Jets play the Patriots on Christmas Eve, so how do you think I feel?
I don't know, man. I still think Brady can be rattled if you just get your defensive line all over him, but I guess that's something we'll have to discuss right about now, actually. So let's get back to the Jets. We have seen something of a quick rise and fall of the New York Jets and, of course, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, I'd said all along that I was not nearly as impressed with Fitzpatrick as a lot of other people were trying to be. I always said that Fitzpatrick was not a good quarterback, and a lot of people said, I think even you to an extent, Matt, said that Fitzpatrick is a big part of why they're succeeding. Would you now say that it's different now and Fitzpatrick is a big part of why they are failing?
Oh, you nailed it right on the head. I mean, it's the polar opposite. I mean, you can't you have to look at Ryan Fitzpatrick's 2015 season and commend him for it. I mean, it was a good season. I mean, he played really well. He set the Jets franchise single season record for touchdown passes. I mean, it's just, and granted, you know, the New York Jets, you know, setting a quarterback record for the New York Jets isn't anything to feel high and mighty about, but you can't diminish what he did. What I think it was more a product of he was bum slaying. He was playing against an inferior schedule. I think the Jets only played 3 or 4 games last season, 2 of which were the Patriots against playoff teams from 2015. So they walk into this buzzsaw where they start out with 6 out of 7 games against playoff teams from last year, and they got it handed to them. I mean, they pulled it together a little bit against the Ravens and Browns, but those are 2 AFC bottom feeders as well. and Fitzpatrick has been the brunt of the problems. I mean, he was given, after he threw 6 interceptions against the Chiefs in Week 3, he was given 3 more weeks to right the ship and figure it out, and his play didn't get any better. So, they tried making the switch to Geno Smith. Naturally, he tears his ACL, further compounding the issue. And Fitz has been okay in the last 2 games, but he hasn't, he's taken a different approach. He's been far more conservative with the ball. But, you point to the season, and you got to point the finger at Ryan Fitzpatrick first and foremost. He's been the opposite of what he was last year.
Any idea why the sudden drop off? Do you think you really think it's just the schedule?
The schedule doesn't help. I mean, I think the contrast from last year's schedule to this year's schedule is significant enough because they've played some pretty good defenses. The Bengals, Seahawks, Cardinals all have pretty good defenses. The Chiefs, I think that matters. It's not the be-all, end-all, obviously. I mean, I think not having Eric Decker since Week 3 has really, really hurt this offense, particularly in the red zone. And I just think Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, he got away with a lot of interceptions last year that he isn't getting away with this year. I think it's been much of the same in that he's been sort of forcing the ball into Brandon Marshall with regularity. He's been forcing those balls in the tight windows. He's, scrambling for his life and refusing to slide. It's just a matter of he's getting, penalized for them in a sense. And he's just an inconsistent quarterback. I mean, you look at his career arc. He's a 7th-round pick out of Harvard, does nothing for the first several years of his career, hits it big in Buffalo, gets the big contract extension. 2 years later, he's back on the open market. He goes to Tennessee. He goes to Houston. He goes to the Jets. He's rising up again. He peaks, and then now he gets paid the $12 million, and he swoons again. So the guy's just inconsistent, and he's unreliable, and I think last year was just the better degree of that, and this year's been, bad Fitzpatrick per se.
Have you seen the comics by that guy Draw Play Dave on Twitter, Matt? He did I don't
think I have.
It's hysterical. He brought up what is called the Ryan Fitzpatrick cycle. He goes in to be he signed by some team to a cheap contract to be the backup. The starter gets hurt. Fitzpatrick balls out. Fitzpatrick gets paid, and then he sucks the next year. And then he gets released and does it again.
The guy said it himself. He thinks he plays better as a pissed off underdog. He's like, that's great, but what do you do when you gotta sustain that over the course of a career? I mean, I get it. He's an underdog. He went to Harvard. That's not exactly a football factory. He was drafted in the 7th round. That nails it on the head. I mean, that is the cycle with this guy. And I always was for bringing back Fitzpatrick because I thought he gave the Jets the best chance to win right now. I didn't think Geno Smith was the guy who was going to be able to do that. I don't think the Jets did either. They eventually caved to his demands, and it's sort of backfired. And it's not all his fault. And I'm sure we'll get into the other reasons to blame as we continue today. But like I said, you look at who's the biggest reason for the Jets' downfall this year. It's got to be Fitz.
Chad, anything to add?
No, I mean, I think from the Jets, obviously, I'm not following the Jets day to day, but I think there's a real bitter taste right now in both the city of New York and the hardcore Jets fan, because Ryan Fitzpatrick, he took a pretty hard stance to push the Jets to get paid, and the Jets simply didn't have the money to do it, and they had to make some. I shouldn't say they didn't have the money; they didn't have the salary cap space to do it, and so, it took a while in the offseason to get Ryan Fitzpatrick in there, and he's been an underachiever since then. So they've got that stigma right now where people aren't very happy with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you can't say any other way. He lost his job to Geno Smith this season, and the reason Ryan Fitzpatrick is starting right now is Geno Smith got hurt, and so that's a big issue. And he's they're running this dangerous level right now. Where the Jets are 3-5, and they're probably 1 to 2 losses away from. You got to really start to consider it is Ryan Fitzpatrick just becoming a progress stopper, because the Jets do have 2 guys that at this point in the season they're getting close. They got to find out, is Bryce Petty the guy? Is Hackenberg the guy? They need to find out if those are their guys of the future, because if the Jets are going to end up having a losing season, they got to consider, are one of those guys our guys, or should we look at, making a move in the draft to get a top prospect? And, if the Jets get one or two more losses, all Ryan Fitzpatrick does is get in the way of them getting that figured out. And so I think this game is already coming up on the horizon where if Ryan Fitzpatrick, for whatever reason, has a bad game in Miami, the first half he throws 2 or 3 picks, it wouldn't shock me at all if he gets pulled. Because if Ryan Fitzpatrick is pulling picks, what good does he do the Jets right now to be playing? He's there to not make mistakes, to play efficiently at the quarterback position, to let the rest of that team, they have a great defensive line. They're probably going to want to run the football, get some passes out to Brandon Marshall. But Ryan Fitzpatrick absolutely cannot throw a bunch of interceptions, because otherwise they might as well put the younger, more talented guys in there. And so I think at 3-5, the leash is very short right now for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Oh, yeah, Chad, I completely agree with you. And, you look, they are 3-5, and you look at that on the surface and you go, okay, it's not terrible. I mean, you look at the entire landscape of the AFC. I mean, I think Buffalo's in a wild card spot, or they're right on the outside of it at 4-4. So you're technically a game out. Here's the problem: the Jets have losses to the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Steelers, and those are just pivotal AFC tiebreakers that you're not going to get back. The Jets went 10-6, and they ended up losing out on a tiebreaker to Pittsburgh because they didn't play head-to-head. Well, they had an opportunity this year to at least have a head-to-head tiebreaker over at least a couple of teams who would be, you would think, competing for, an AFC playoff spot, and they stubbed their toe in each game. So I agree. I mean, I've said for a while I thought the Jets were kind of done, and I have been pushing for Bryce Petty to play. I don't think you're going to see Hackenberg this year. It really scares me because they did draft him in the second round, and people are comparing him to Petty in the respect that, he's a complete project. And that's really, really terrifying when you look around the league and you see guys like Dak Prescott and Trevor Siemian playing well with Dallas and Denver respectively. So I don't think we see Hackenberg, and I think, I've been pushing for Petty because, I think the Jets are out of it, and I think they will lose to the Dolphins and put themselves at 3-6. And I think at that point you're in a position where your season's pretty much over. Even if you win 7 straight, you've still got to compete with 3 other, 4 other, 5 other teams who could have a similar record, who have a tiebreaker over you. So if they lose this game to Miami, I'm pushing for Petty to start. Maybe not against Los Angeles the following week, but maybe, make the change over the bye week and see what you got in the kid, because they kept Bryce Petty. They kept 4 quarterbacks for a reason, and Bryce Petty was the guy who was, on the bubble. They were going to keep Fitzpatrick because they had just signed him, obviously. It was a, training camp eve deal that they made to bring him back because they weren't impressed with Geno Smith during, OTAs and mini camp. So, you had Fitz. You couldn't cut Geno because you had no experience behind Fitzpatrick in case of an injury. So you made a conscious decision to keep Bryce Petty. You got to see what he can do, especially in a season that appears to be lost.
Well, I mean, Matt, I don't want to be doom and despair and agony because, like you said, the AFC is wide open. Let's be honest. When people make the claim that there's only like one good team in the AFC this year and it's New England, they're not exactly far off.
It's possibly true, especially with Big Ben hurt.
Exactly. It's like there's no one I can look at in the AFC and say, you know what, that is a playoff football team. Maybe the Bengals, I guess. Maybe and obviously New England, because New England is New England, and they're just going to do New England things regardless of whether Brady is there or not. They could put me in a quarterback, and Bill Belichick will make it work somehow.
And that's amazing. And so you look at I'm looking at the AFC standings now. I'm sorry, Buffalo's not even close to the wild card. It's Denver and Kansas City at 6-2. Denver's 6-2. Kansas City's 5-2. And the Jets, and why I say, the AFC's wide open. Well, the Jets are so behind the 8 ball because they have lost some crucial games. I mean, if it comes down to them, Kansas City and Cincinnati, they're out of luck. I mean, if they have the same record at the end of the day, they are out of luck. So, you incorporate that into the standings and you think, okay, that's an extra game back technically in the standings. That's why I kind of rule them out. Yes, their schedule softens up, but I just I don't see Fitzpatrick playing consistently enough for it to be a feasible expectation that the Jets could somehow get to 10-6, 11-5, and make the playoffs. They have practically no margin for error.
But here's the
Well,
go ahead, Chad.
well, that was kind of the point I was making with Fitzpatrick leash is he's there right now to let the Jets team win games. I don't think that Fitzpatrick is there to put this team on his shoulder, make some amazing plays, and win football games. But the problem is Fitzpatrick's been losing football games. You can't throw
Right.
interceptions in
Right.
this league, and if he's throwing interceptions and you're the Jets, there's no point in having him in there because Bryce Petty can probably make better throws than Ryan Fitzpatrick can, and he can throw interceptions, as he's learning. And so if Ryan Fitzpatrick can't efficiently manage the offense, that's why I think he lost the job to Geno Smith because Geno Smith can probably do quite a bit more athletically than what Ryan Fitzpatrick can. And so that's the point where I'm making. If he throws, even in the Dolphins game, if he throws say a couple picks in the first half, they may pull him because he's just not getting it done. And you might as well put a young guy that has more talent in there that can make some big plays. And so it's
I can
really
see it.
close to that. In this game. So in terms of the AFC guys, I think the Bengals probably are in pretty good shape in the Central with Roethlisberger hurt. I don't know when he's going to get back, but the Steelers are not a great football team with Big Ben out. So I don't know that the Steelers, unless the Bengals just have a couple close losses or something like that, and they somehow keep the Steelers in it. But right now that division is the Bengals to lose now with Roethlisberger out. I think the Broncos still have a very good defense, and so you can't overlook the Broncos. They'll probably be
Yeah, I forgot Denver.
in the playoff run. I mean, Simeon hasn't looked bad, but they still have a very good ball club, so they'll probably be in it in terms of AFC teams. But nobody's looking even close to the Patriots right now with Brady back, and obviously Brady has a chip on his shoulder. They're looking good, and sometimes I look at it and I shake my head on how far ahead the Patriots seem to be of everybody right now because if you took the Jets, the Bills, or the Dolphins and you put our teams at their record at 7-1 or whatever the Patriots are right now, there's no way in the world we right now would trade off one of our higher end linebackers because we'd be thinking, well, even if he's not playing the greatest, what if my other guy gets hurt? And so that's total Patriots where this week here they are at 7-1 and they're trading off one of their defensive stars for draft picks. And so it's just kind of amazing to see that stuff happen when they're the team that seems to do it. But we get to the trade deadline and you really don't see much happening in the Jets or the Dolphins or the Bills.
I don't know, Matt. Chad, Matt. Honestly, at this point, New England. I've given up. I've given up on trying to ever beat New England until New England has Tom Brady retire, and even then, I'm not going to hold my breath because if you can go 10-6 with Matt Castle, and you can go 3-1 with a combination of Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, who we haven't heard his name since Brady came back. We haven't heard Garoppolo's name since Brady came back either. So at this point, I've reached the decision to not even care what New England does. They're going to go to the playoffs no matter what because Belichick, that man. I don't know how he does it. Like, maybe he's doing Spygate again and he's just being more careful. Maybe he's just really that much of a genius. But this man just doesn't get outcoached ever. He knows exactly what every team's weaknesses are and he exploits them to the fullest. To the fullest. And that's how he wins football games. And I don't know why other teams don't try to do that.
No, but listen, guys. I mean, this week, I think these are legitimate reports. The Jets had offers for Brandon Marshall, and the Dolphins had offers for Cameron Wake, and they didn't make those trades. Now,
why
I don't
would
know.
you, man?
Well,
That's their best player.
Well, my point is Cameron Wake's 34.
He's
Is
34
are
in
the
his Chad. He's 34 in the number. I don't believe he's 34 in his body.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, are the Dolphins legitimately a Super Bowl contender right now? They're on the outskirts of a playoff contender, and if you want to make the bold moves, sometimes you have to. And so, if you can get a good draft pick for Cam Wake, you got to consider that. Or for the Jets, for Brandon Marshall, are those players going to be part of a Super Bowl run, or are they not? And so, I was just making the point here. Bill Belichick is he's 7-1, and he's trading off one of his star players for a pick based on where he feels that talent is for the pick. Whereas,
And he wanted it's not only that, Chad. Jamie Collins wanted money, and Belichick didn't want to pay him, so he just shipped him
well,
out.
he's in a
Right. Yeah.
contract
He's
year.
on a contract year. Yep.
He is. I'm just making the point. The Patriots seem to always be ahead of everybody when they're trading off what would people consider. And this is nothing new. I mean, they've traded off people like in the past. You remember when they traded Seymour to the Raiders? I think they got a first-round pick out of him or something like that because he was like a Pro Bowl D tackle at the time. And so, I'm just making the point that the Patriots seem to know things and get these deals done, and the Dolphins and Bills and Jets just don't seem to get those deals done. So whether that's the right move or wrong move, that comes down to the specific deal. But they were the team that was active, and our teams weren't. And so it's going to be interesting if you fast forward maybe a year or two from now. Where's Cam Wake going to be in 1 to 2 seasons, and where's Brandon Marshall going to be in 1 to 2 seasons versus what you could have got, in the draft.
It's an interesting discussion, but let's get back to the Dolphins and the Jets specifically. Now, Matt, I want to know from your perspective as a Jets fan. Obviously, you have to keep an eye on pretty much all the AFC East and stuff like that. So, based on the last 2 games that you saw from the Dolphins, what are your thoughts? Is this a fluke, or is this actually something that we may have found an identity? Because that's what people are saying.
I mean, I don't think what Jay Ajayi is doing is a fluke. Granted, I am surprised. I mean, I am surprised that they, the Steelers game is tough because, you do lose Roethlisberger. And if you look at Pittsburgh's history, on the road in games that they're, favored in to win pretty heavily, they seem to drop those games more often than not. So that was a really letdown performance for me from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, kudos to the Dolphins for winning it, but the Dolphins are a really tough team for me to read. I mean, I really like Adam Gase. I think he's a really good offensive mind. I still have hope for Ryan Tannehill, although I know that's probably not the case across Miami. I mean, it's amazing what Jay Ajayi has done, and I'm surprised. I mean, it seems like that offensive line is starting to gel a little bit. I mean, you have to be taking some sort of improvements to rush for 200 yards in consecutive games. I mean, that's not just the running back. You got to have some sort of blocking. The Bills game, I was watching that, and I wasn't able to watch it intently because I had my eye on other things that for my other job. But that was just a wacky game, and I give the Dolphins credit for being pretty resilient in that game because I do believe they were down early, and they sort of dug out of a hole, which is impressive. Maybe they're figuring something out. I mean, maybe Ryan Tannehill's a guy who, he can be set up for success with a strong running game, and that's really something the Dolphins haven't had, even with Lamar Miller in town. They haven't had that emphasis on the running game. Maybe that's what it takes for Ryan Tannehill to really, maybe not reach his potential, but play at a efficient enough level where you can win football games.
Ironically enough, that's exactly what Dolphins fans have been calling for the longest time, is give Tannehill a running game, give Tannehill blocking, and then we'll see what happens. It just seems to me that that's like the complete team is I don't know if you follow Omar Kelly or not, but he calls it the unicorn offensive line. Finally, all 5 starting offensive linemen are all there at once. So, and it seems that
right, that's huge. I mean, that's continuity. I mean, that's huge, and you have to have that. And I've ragged on the Dolphins' offensive line the past couple of years. I mean, I know
and
you've heard me rag
so.
on them since we've talked, and they've been bad. I mean, it's been a terrible unit. Now it seems like they're starting to gel. It's just, I mean, you guys see it more closely than I do, but it seems, I mean, you rush for 200 yards. I don't care if you have Marshall Faulk in the backfield. You rush for 200 yards in consecutive games. Your offensive line is doing something right. And 2 weeks ago, that's not against the Bills' front seven is no slouch. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it all started in the trenches. I mean, they've had so much, it's been a turnstile along the offensive line for the Dolphins, it seems like. So maybe just having that continuity is what has really, helped them break through.
All right, so now we're going to get to the Jets. Now, you brought up how the blocking and the running game has made the Dolphins work out much better, and that is true. I believe that Ajayi in that front four, the starting offensive line, has been the reason why Miami is suddenly looking so much better, and I don't think anybody's going to argue that. Now, Here's the problem for the Dolphins. I don't imagine they'll be able to do that against the Jets defense because their running defense is definitely not a joke. So what are your thoughts on your Jets defensive line?
I mean, I just think back to the London game and how the Jets absolutely destroyed the Dolphins on both sides of the ball in the trenches. It seems like the Dolphins' offensive line, like I said, has taken a step forward. The bye week definitely helps. The Jets, other than the Monday Night Football game against Arizona and David Johnson, they've been really, really good against the run. I believe they're fourth in the NFL in average rushing yards allowed per game. So one thing the Jets can hang their hat on, if anything, is they can stop the run. I think they'll do fine against Miami. I still think, while Miami is improving, they don't have that, excellent offensive line yet. I think it has the potential to be a pretty good, unit. It's not there yet. And the Jets, the Jets are playing with this sort of we can't lose mentality, and there will be a sense of urgency entering this game, I'd hope. They certainly didn't show that in Cleveland. And I think, honestly, I don't know how many times the Dolphins will need to run the ball because the Jets secondary is pretty awful. So I don't know if the Dolphins will go with the traditional use the run to set up the pass approach. They might go right at them with Tannehill and Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker. And I'll tell you right now, Kenny Stills will get a deep touchdown because the Jets cannot contain anyone deep. So I think while the defensive line has a chance to control the matchup, it just hasn't been what people expected. You look at that unit with Mo Wilkerson, Steve McClendon is the nose tackle / 2 technique, 3 technique. Sheldon Richardson and Leonard Williams, that unit was supposed to be really, really dominant, and it has been in the running game, but it hasn't translated to the pass rush. So while I think the Jets will do fine against the Jai in the run, I'm much more worried about the other aspects of, Miami's offense in the vertical passing game.
Now, what happened, Matt, with the whole secondary? Because I remember the first year Todd Bowles showed up, he spent so much time shoring up that secondary. And for the most part, all those guys are still there. So now why all of a sudden the secondary just isn't working?
It's a mess. And this was something that I said in August was, maybe an underlying concern, not something at the top of the priority list, but something to, sort of watch and see what happens. And it's just become an all-out disaster. I mean, they lose Antonio Cromartie. They let him go. He was terrible. Darrelle Revis, he is not Revis Island. He is far from it. He was, if you watch the first half of last week's game against Cleveland, Terrell Pryor ate him up, and it was pretty hard to watch because you see this, potential Hall of Fame cornerback just be sort of rendered down to an average player. It's pretty hard to watch. That hasn't helped. Buster Screen and Marcus Williams, they're not starting cornerbacks. That's the problem. These guys were playing depth roles last year. Buster Screen was playing his more natural role as a nickel corner, and now these guys have been forced to play on the outside. They're getting killed. If you want to see a really great example of how bad Buster Screen can be, tune into, or you can rewatch the Monday night game against the Cardinals. I mean, I think he was flagged 4 or 5 times for holding, defensive pass interference penalties. And over the top, I mean, you look at the safety play. Calvin Pryor's taken a really, really big step back after a really impressive second season. He was a guy who I expected to really take a big step forward in his third year, and he's regressed. So they don't have a lot of depth. They've got Justin Burris and Darryl Roberts as their depth cornerback, and they've shown glimpses, but they're not anything special either. And it's just, I mean, they get killed by the deep ball. I mean, A.J. Green's killed them. It's been from receivers as good as A.J. Green and Antonio Brown killing them to receivers as terrible as Marquise Goodwin of the Bills killing them. And Tanner McAvoy, who caught his first touchdown pass with the Seahawks a few weeks ago. And they find new ways to get beat deep, and it's just, those big plays kill you. And, I mean, Josh McCown had thrown for, I think, 220-something yards in the first half on Sunday. So the secondary is just a disaster. And, I mean, the pass rush hasn't been good either, and it's a two-way street. You got to have a good pass rush to, help your secondary. And the pass rush has been sorely disappointing, so that doesn't help either. But mainly it's Revis regressing and you're trying to get the most out of two guys as starters who are pretty much depth players in Screen and Marcus Williams.
So
the Jets secondary is just terrible, and that's all you need to know. It's just a dumpster fire.
It'll be interesting. The funny thing is the teams really aren't that dissimilar in that aspect because Terrell Pryor tore the Dolphins up, AJ Green tore the Dolphins up, and so it's the same thing happened to the Dolphins as well. Both teams have weaknesses, and the second half of the season will be how will they address them. And so to me, this is an interesting test for Adam Gase to see where they go from here because he did adjust to the struggles the Dolphins were having, and primarily with the Dolphins, they struggled early on because Adam Gase wants to run a no huddle, really fast paced offense. And part of the issue is Adam Gase learned that with Peyton Manning, and the Dolphins don't have Peyton Manning running their offense right now. And I watched the first few games, and you just saw mistake after mistake. It wasn't like the Dolphins were physically being manhandled or they just looked slow. It was guys completely missing blocks, receivers running the wrong routes, Tannehill consistently having to move the running back to the right side because he lined up on the wrong side, and he just didn't have the team ready to execute that pace of offense. And so Gase really slowed things down. He started to huddle, and he started running a lot more double tight end power formations, or in other words, simplifying the offense. And that's worked the last 2 weeks with Ajayi being able to run the football. Another thing, too, is, the last 2 weeks, Miami finally has their starting offensive line back. For the majority of the season, they had 1 to 2 starters on their offensive line missing. And so it's going to be a fun matchup watching the offensive line go against the Jets defensive line because they're both pretty good right now. They're both healthy and solid, so that'll be interesting. In terms of the game, I don't know what to expect right now with the Jets secondary. Tannehill historically it's in the best defense's best interest to blitz him pretty heavily, and I know Todd Bowles likes to blitz. It's going to be interesting to see if he feels like trying that with the struggles his corners have had. Because if you start blitzing heavy, you can look for Miami to probably take some shots down the field to Kenny Stills and Devontae Parker to try to force those corners to try to match up with those guys one-on-one down the field. So there'll be probably a little bit of a chess match there because I know he's probably getting some flack, but Todd Bowles knows how to coach defense. And so and Adam Gase knows how to coach offense. And so there ought to be some good chess matches going on that side of the football. With that being said, one thing that Miami's gotten away with is Miami struggles with teams that power run the football to the left side, and that's been a strategy teams have had success with is just don't run it in Ndamukong Suh, just run to the other side. And Miami's struggled to get a consistent performance out of the right side of their defensive line, and so they've tried a lot of different combinations. But to me, if I was the Jets, what the Jets don't want to have happen is let Miami get out to a 10 to 14 point lead because that forces the Jets to have to pass. And I can tell you right now, Todd Bowles does not want to have, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's, he's probably thrown 10 to 11 interceptions already this year. He doesn't want to have.
It's 11, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't want to have. He doesn't want him in a position where Miami can just send Cam Wake after him and not worry about the run so much and force him to pass. I think if the Jets get in that scenario, it's going to end badly for them. But what the Jets want to be able to do is pound the football at the left side of the Miami defense. And to do that, they want to keep the game close because I do think the Jets, I don't think Miami can consistently stop the run there. They may stop a run here or stop a run there, but if the Jets stay committed to it, they'll be able to get some good chunk yardage pounding the football at the Miami defense. And so I look for the Jets to want to establish that in the game plan, and I look for Miami to want to try to help their defensive out by getting some points on the board early on. So I really don't expect Miami to come out with Jay Ajayi and try to power on the football. I don't think Adam Gase is living in a reality where he thinks we can just power run the football right at the Jets defensive line because that's going right at the best aspect of their team. I think he'll probably come out passing a lot and force the Jets secondary to try to stop them. And if Miami succeeds at getting some quick points in that game, I think Miami has a very good chance. If Miami struggles and lets the Jets start to wear down the defense with the run, then the game will begin to shift to the Jets' favor. If that's the way that flows. So that's, to me, what to look for in this game is if Miami can score points early, I think Miami will be in great position. If Miami doesn't get the points up early and this game is close, I think the game will start to shift to be towards the Jets' favor the longer it goes.
That's right. And I want to say this also. That, Chad, if Tannehill, I'm sorry, not Tannehill. If Gase decides that Tannehill is going to be the reason why the Dolphins are going to do things on offense, and that would be a good choice considering the Jets' secondary woes, that would mean that he is picking on the weakness of the New York Jets. But I want to shift to a more general, a little more of a broad spectrum here for just a minute. I often wonder, and I often make this point, and I even have my I even have family members coming to me and asking me this very question: why don't other teams do what Bill Belichick does, and that is pick on the other team's weaknesses? It just seems to me that I can't imagine that Bill Belichick's scheme on both offense and defense is so perfect, so flawless, that no team, no matter how hard they try, can't beat them, which means that he's changing the scheme per team. So it just makes me wonder, why can't other coaches do the exact same thing? Surely Belichick is not so much smarter than every other coach in the league that no other team can do it. But it seems to me that the only team able to do it has been the Patriots.
I think Bill Belichick values, if you look at all the potential players you're going to put out on the field, the Patriots seem to have a very good knack for acquiring players that are very smart. And so they tend to take players that I think are smart and overachievers over pure talent. And they seem to win with execution and being able to change game plans up. And Bill Belichick is exceptional at getting his team ready to attack your weakness. And so, yeah, if it was the Patriots against the Jets, they would probably come out no huddle. Tom Brady would be throwing pass after pass after pass to Edelman or Gronk until the Jets had to back way off into pass coverage and they'd start running. And those players just they're so good at reading the defense, where they're lining up and where to run those routes. It's fun to see it, and just wish you had players that could do that. I think a lot of the other teams, they tend to look so much at how many times can this guy bench 225 pounds, how fast is his 40, and you get these amazing athletes, but then you suddenly have all these sophisticated game plans changing on the fly during the game. And those coaches and players, for whatever reason, have trouble keeping up with how the Patriots do it. And if anybody had that formula to figure out how Belichick gets that type of player and how they get them prepared, everybody'd be doing it. But as a testament to the Patriots, teams just haven't figured out how to do it like they do yet.
Yeah, I just, it's yes, Bill Belichick is, I don't even know if it's arguably anymore. He is the best coach in NFL history. Whether you want to give him slack for Spygate and Deflategate, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, the parts change, yet, this team has had so much sustained success, as long as I can remember as a young football fan. It's just, and it's not all Belichick, and it's personnel. I mean, it's just whatever they do, whoever they have in their pro and college personnel scouting staffs, they're tremendous. I mean, they seem to always find guys who are not only good football players, but they're good football players who can buy into what they're doing. And Belichick uses these guys to give himself the best tactical advantage possible. How you replicate that, I don't think you honestly can. And how much does Tom Brady play a role in this success? It's a lot. I mean, you cannot diminish what Brady has done, but you saw what the Patriots did in the first 4 games of this season. Jimmy Garoppolo might very well be the franchise quarterback for this team in the future, but he was not that through the first 3 games or 2 games that he played in. So it's a systematic. It's the opposite of the Jets. The Jets are a systematic failure, while the Patriots are just from top to bottom, a flagship organization, and they just do everything, it seems like, right. And I don't know if the Jamie Collins trade. I don't know how. I mean, with a defense that I don't know how good it can really be. I did think that was kind of a questionable move. I mean, you're playing for as many Super Bowls as you can with this Brady-Belichick tandem. I would just keep him. If you let him go, you take the compensatory pick and you live. I mean, what they get I think they only got a third-round pick for him. So.
Well, that's about as high as a compensatory pick can be. So that would have to be if they got Sue kind of money.
Right. So, I mean, if you knew you weren't going to pay him, and if you're not going to get better than the compensation pick, why deal him? Unless the guy, maybe he wasn't one of those guys that bought into Belichick's message. And I've seen reports of that where, he was. I don't know if you guys saw the former Patriots staffer who was, ripping the guy on, Boston radio. So, I mean, maybe the guy didn't have a good motor, a good work ethic. I don't know. You don't know what happens behind closed doors, obviously. But, I mean, is Bill Belichick perfect? No, but he's damn near close. And, I mean, he's the closest thing to it in the National Football League. And he's kind of they've just kind of dominated. And I mean, I don't know how they don't get to the Super Bowl this year, even if Ben Roethlisberger gets healthy, even if the Broncos figure it out at quarterback. I don't know how you deny them of the AFC at this point.
It's depressing to talk about the Patriots like this all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why we get geared up for these big 3-5 and 3-4 battles. That's what I live for. We got to, someone's got to get the higher draft pick.
Yeah, exactly. Who can suck the most?
Exactly. That's pretty much what it is at the bottom of the AFC. I mean,
That's what it is in the middle of the AFC.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. I mean, the NFL. I mean, I don't know if we're going to go into this, now, but the NFL's. The product is really, really bad, and you see a lot of teams. It's like you look at the games a week to. How many times do you just look at the weekly slate of games and go, "Oh my God, these games are terrible," or "Oh my God, I don't know what to make of either of these games." I'm not saying you need to have a definitive favorite or a definitive opinion about each game, but it's like you look at some of these games and you just go, "Oh my God!" Like the Bengals Redskins game in London. I mean, granted, it was a really exciting game that resulted in a tie, and it was fitting that it resulted in a tie because those teams are carbon copy of each other. I mean, it's just there's so much mediocrity just running rampant. It's just a matter of what cream rises to the top, and then who's stuck at the bottom with the Jets and the Dolphins.
And this is the other thing I want to touch on really quick. I'm glad you brought that up, Matt. And this is a thing that Dolphins fans and maybe even Jets fans should also hear. How often
probably should hear a lot of things. So
sorry
to cut you off,
but no, that's fine. Both fan bases have a lot to learn, including myself. I'm still learning too. But anyway, I'm looking at this situation. I'm looking at around the NFL, not just Dolphins and Jets. It seems like every team nowadays, even the ones with elite quarterbacks. Here's looking at you, Green Bay Packers. They seem to be struggling to maintain any form of success because players just aren't developing like they used to. It always seems to come down to some gimmick. It always comes down to some little cheat code that you can kind of sneak in and here, you didn't see this coming, now did you? Try that on for size. And then once teams get used to it, they're like, okay, I guess the cheat code doesn't work anymore. Let me try something else. If it's all coming down to new gimmicks, people are going to figure out that eventually gimmicks just aren't going to work anymore. Players need to be developed, and players need to be found that can be developed. And this is the other thing, and it's fitting that you're here now, Matt, because people have been harassing Mike Tannenbaum something fierce all offseason and all season long. And I mean, Chad, I don't know if you're going to agree with this point or not, but I am not as down on Tannenbaum as a lot of people are. And the simple fact is, yes, he made the trade for Maxwell and Kiko. Kiko is actually doing better than Maxwell. That much cannot be denied. And actually, I think there are reports that the Dolphins want to re-sign Kiko Alonso, and I'd be good with that. Kiko's finally starting to rev up a little bit, start looking more like his old self. Maxwell, I don't know what happened to Maxwell. We'll see what happens there. He also he's the one who supposedly drafted Jordan Phillips. Jordan Phillips has all the talent in the world, needs to continue being developed. The defensive line hasn't been the same since I honestly forgot the man's name already, and I feel horrible for it. Who's your defensive coordinator right now, Matt?
Casey Rogers.
Casey Rogers, that's his name. The defensive line for the Dolphins hasn't been the same since Casey Rogers left. So honestly, let me put it this way. If Casey Rogers was still the D-line coach for the Dolphins, I think Jordan Phillips would be a stud by now. So I'll just leave that there. And people are so mad at Tannenbaum for finding nobody and the fact that these rookies are not contributing right away. They wanted more from Leonte Carroo right now because Carroo is supposedly this great guy who's out of, I think is...
Wasn't he a 5th-round pick out of Rutgers or something?
I think he was a 3rd-round pick.
And I think it was
third. Okay.
Yeah, and so he's a 3rd-round pick, and he's like wide receiver, yeah, because we need more of those. And honestly, the Dolphins' wide receiver core is not quite as strong as they were hoping. And we have guys like Jakeem Grant. Like Jakeem Grant is a very exciting player, and that one punt return touchdown should be enough to say, okay, maybe Tannenbaum got that one right. I mean, I would hope so. People like Jakeem Grant. And then you have guys like Tony Lippett. Tony Lippett, I don't think he was around when Tannenbaum was, but Tony Lippett is starting to show some more signs of being good. But my point to this whole situation is teams want so badly to find the right guy who can lead them to the promised land and find all the right players and make sure that they're contributing all right away. And that guy doesn't exist. He doesn't exist. And even the only one who seems to be able to do it on a consistent basis, and I honestly think it's more along the lines of just how the Patriots do things, is Bill Belichick. And none of those guys on the Patriots are particularly impressive as individuals. Somehow they have rigged it so that they are the ultimate team kind of team, if you get what I mean with that. Once one player disappears, suddenly they don't look all that impressive because something in New England, there must be like something in the water or something, because New England, once they actually leave that franchise, most of these players don't actually do that well. And I suspect that Jamie Collins is going to look very much like a pedestrian linebacker once he gets to Cleveland. So where is this
Cleveland
guy?
So it's like it's falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
You know what? It's right. Player development is bad, and it starts at the college level. I mean, if you watch college football, and how many offenses run a pro style anymore? Not many. So you even see teams like Alabama. You know, you always think Alabama's going to stick to tradition. You know, they just dominate because they're great. Now they're running read option stuff, and it's scary to see how, you know, college football has sort of been built on speed and athleticism. And you know, honestly, I mean, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but speed and athleticism is kind of killing football. I mean, you look at it.
No, I think you're right.
You know, you get all these athletes who run these, you know, spread offenses. You capitalize on speed and athleticism. You get people open in space. But then again, your quarterbacks aren't exactly, you know, making downfield reads. They're not looking for mismatches. They're not diagramming defenses at the line of scrimmage. They have a quick read. They go to it. There you go. That's the college game. You bring that up to the NFL, where the speed and athleticism is at an all-time high. Well, that leads to concussion. The game's faster than ever. The collisions are harder than ever. You know, it's just people are getting so injured. It seems like every week there's serious injuries, and it's horrible. And there's, you know, I don't know how much you can really do about it. The NFL's trying to, you know, limit practice time. Well, guess what?
That makes it worse.
Limiting practice time kills your player development. It kills player development. So the game is becoming too fast, honestly. I really think it is, and I think that's what's going to ultimately be, if there is a downfall of the NFL or football in general, I think you'll point to those two things and say, it's flashy at first, and then I don't know, it's scary. I mean, you know, you're getting these college athletes who are really fast and really athletic. I mean, look at the guys who are being drafted as outside linebackers now, like Leonard Floyd from Georgia, who went to Chicago Bears. The guy is thin. I mean, he is just a thin guy, but he's fast and he can beat people. He can beat a 350-pound lineman across the edge, and that's what we're going for now. We're using more raw speed and athleticism than actual, you know, talent development, you know, recognition of schematics and just things like that. That, you know, maybe 5-10 years ago were crucial. So yeah, I mean, you're so much less likely to find the guy now than you were 5-10 years ago, because the guy is probably not nearly as developed as he should be.
Chad?
Oh, I agree with that. I think the biggest issue the league has is they've tried to water it down and they tried to score more points at the same time. And so they changed the rules drastically over the last decade on what a cornerback can do. And it's not shocking to me that suddenly the game is all about Tom Brady's and Peyton Manning's and these guys, because it used to be you could man up on these guys, press them, and disrupt their timing and attack the quarterback. And now they have the penalties so severe on pass interference. It's designed to try to allow teams to throw the ball all over the place and score points. That's why you're seeing more spread offenses, because that's how you compete. And the safety part of it is changing. You start naming off some of the great defensive players in this game. If I said Ronnie Lott is one of the greatest safeties to ever play, or Lawrence Taylor, and these guys, that type of player in
Ed
today's
Reed.
NFL, yeah, that type
Ed
of
Reed,
player
yeah.
though, yeah, but that type of player now is getting warned or to get thrown out of the game and getting flagged for targeting. I mean, it used to be job was to blow guys up, to disrupt the passing game, and to make games physical and beat teams up. But now with the concussion issue at the forefront for the NFL, now what you read about in games every week is who's getting fined for how much. I mean, how many fines get delved out every single week right now in the NFL for hits?
And for some of the dumb, not just for hits, for some of the dumbest reasons. What was it? Damian Williams and J.J. did a dance and they got penalized for it. It's like, whose feelings are we worried about hurting here? The other team?
Well, that's part of the issue. And I think it all boils down to right now, the NFL as a whole, and this comes down to the owners, they've got to take a step back and realize it's time to get Roger Goodell out of being the commissioner. Whether you agree with how he's doing things or not, he has been the commissioner for a long time now. I don't know anybody that really likes the guy, and they need
the owners like him. The owners like him because they make him money.
Well, because he's controlling the money flow to them. But with that being said, though, I don't think he is growing the popularity of the sport right now with what they're doing with the sport. And so they're trying to take away more and more aspects of the game and whenever you do that, it makes all the traditional things less significant. If you move back field goals, then to me, every field goal kicker right now is in a completely different world than the past field goal kickers and how 2-point conversions work. And they're changing in so many aspects of the game. I think that it's turning people off, and people that watch it, I know you got to protect the players for concussion protocols, but when you have defensive linemen trained that you got to be so careful sacking the quarterback or you're going to get flagged. If you're corner, you got to be so careful in your coverage or you're going to get flagged. It just becomes one big flag fest, and it's not that entertaining to watch anymore. It's taking away.
And it's not easy to tackle a guy like it's not easy to tackle a guy like Ben Roethlisberger. You kind of have to hit him hard and knock him down. It's like I agree. I mean, it's all in a, and again, why are people getting flagged? Well, pass interference, you're inhibiting a wide receiver's speed and athleticism. You're restricting him. It's I don't know. I don't, is Goodell the fall guy? I don't know about that. He's kind of just a mouthpiece for the owners. The problem is the NFL hasn't had its priorities straight, and they're slow to the boat on player safety. The domestic violence stuff and the off-field stuff certainly doesn't help. The problem is they just, how many years do we have to go through the catch no catch question before we get a definitive rule change? Why is that not important? But flagging a guy for, like you said, dancing in the end zone when it's so hard to, score in the NFL and, accomplish things in the NFL, and you're not going to let a guy celebrate. I just think the league, and if you want to place it on Goodell, I understand, but I just think the league as a whole has its priorities messed up, and I think it's still, the NFL's going to make money. How much money might vary from year to year, but I think they've had their eyes set too much on expanding the game and changing the game to be greedy rather than to actually make the sport better and more appealing. And it's showing. I mean, like we said earlier in the show, the ratings are down, and you want to peg it on the election. Okay, that's great, but let's see what happens November to January.
And the other thing, guys, and I'm like, this cannot be ignored, and really, this is about as deep as it can possibly get. Society as a whole seems to frown. Like you brought up the domestic violence. Yes, that is a thing. And then you have like Josh Brown, the former kicker for the New York Giants, talking about how, yes, he abused his wife. No, he never actually struck her. So now it's suddenly the context is different. Like, how did you abuse her? Did you yell at her? Did you scream at her? I mean, what did you do exactly? So but it doesn't matter. And again, let me preface my comments. I am not condoning whatever it is he did. If she was abused, she was abused, and he needs to pay for that. But suddenly, it's become a situation where if you hear the words domestic violence, you're done. Like, you're done forever, everywhere. You are officially gone from the world. We don't ever want to see your face again, and we hope. And honestly, some people hope that the guy dies in a hole somewhere. So, and this kind of mentality of oversaturation of political correctness. Let me put it that way. What are you worried about? Like, again, the dancing in the end zone. Why? What difference does it make whether the Antonio Brown decides he wants to twerk in the end zone or not? Whose feelings are getting hurt? Who is getting offended by what Antonio Brown just did? Is it the fans? I don't think so. I think the fans would be excited because Antonio Brown just scored a touchdown. Oh yeah, go Pittsburgh. So the other team is getting their feelings hurt. If they're really worried about the players on the other side, which I highly doubt they are, then those guys need to grow up. You just got scored on. Get over it. Fix it.
I don't think this just is my personal view. I don't think the NFL has any business whatsoever being involved with people that are charged with any kind of a crime. They should only be involved with if people getting charged or convicted of a crime. But like the domestic abuse, whether it's a felony, stealing, whatever it is.
Right, but that's what I said. That's why I don't condone it.
I know, but the issue right now is the way Roger Goodell is they do punish people just for being accused, and that's what leads to problems because they never do it on an even platform. He's just deciding case by case what he's going to do with somebody, how long he's going to suspend him for, what he's going to fine him for, and it's never consistent. And I've always had a problem with if a guy gets accused of something and he hasn't been convicted of it, what is the NFL is not a courtroom. The NFL doesn't have a jury and attorneys, and they have no business. I mean, could you imagine for your job if you get charged with or you get accused of something but you haven't actually been legally charged with it? It shouldn't be affecting your job until you're found guilty. And so to me, it should be simple. It should be if you get a domestic violence charge, this is your punishment. Whether if they want to be strict on it, fine. Somebody gets charged with the domestic violence, they get a year suspension, no question. Everybody gets treated the same way. But the problem is Roger Goodell and the league as a whole, they're getting involved and having to know all the circumstances. They got to send out all these people to do interviews and talk to these people. And I don't understand why the NFL is even involved in that aspect. To me, that should be decided in a courtroom, not by the people running the NFL. And so that just leads to problems. That's why you have all these different organizations putting pressure on the NFL to try to get involved because the NFL does get involved. And so they've already set the precedent that if somebody gets accused of domestic violence, then the NFL has to suddenly go find out all the facts and the details. And to me, that's not their job. Their concern should be the NFL and football, not legalities. So some people disagree with me on that, but it just becomes this big messy problem for Goodell and the teams and the owners to deal with when that's what the legal system's for. Let those people do their job and punish people accordingly on what the legal system decides. In terms of the popularity of the game, I like I said, I could take your point very fairly that Goodell's the fall guy, but I'm just saying they need to change it up. Goodell's been in there a long time, whether it's the owners and Goodell's just the face, well, then they need to get a new face because the players all across the board, I would say if you did a survey of all the NFL players, very small percent of them like or trust Roger Goodell. They feel like Roger Goodell does not have the players' interests in his mind. He's just worried about money, and a lot of his decisions are doing that. And they need to get a commissioner back in there that people like and people trust that can lead the league forward. And I just don't think Roger Goodell's that guy.
Do you guys remember Bullygate a few years ago? Richie Incognito was accused of being bullied, or rather, excuse me. Let me flip that. Jonathan Martin was supposedly being bullied by Richie Incognito, and two other players. One is, I don't even know where he is, John Jerry, and of course Pouncey's still with the Dolphins. Incognito, this turned into a whole giant mess. The Dolphins were once again the laughingstock of the NFL, except for a horrible, horrible reason. Now we have the face of bullying on the roster. Incognito was out of football for about a year and a half, and then he winds up in Buffalo. And of course, there's the whole text messaging thing. Look at all these nasty words that have been exchanged back and forth between Jonathan Martin and Richie Incognito. And the whole time, Incognito kept saying, this is just how we talk. This is how we do stuff. It's how we work. It's how we've always been. I don't know why all of a sudden it's a problem when it wasn't a problem this year or the year before that or the year even before that. It suddenly became a point that saying words, and obviously, they were nasty words. I'm not going to deny that they weren't nasty words. They were ugly, disgusting. I would never say those words in public or in private, but they were just words. I'm pretty sure Richie had no intention of doing any of the things he actually texted him, but the fact that they were said, words were said. Words are very powerful in today's day and age. At some point, you hear people say actions speak louder than words. I'm not sure that's true anymore, guys. It really doesn't feel like actions speak louder than words anymore. It seems to me that a word seems to hurt more than somebody's action almost. Because that's just how sensitive people have gotten. Richie Incognito almost lost his career because Jonathan Martin couldn't take a joke. And it's a joke that has probably been done over many years with several different teams, but suddenly Incognito does it and it gets out, and suddenly the NFL is in a position where they are suddenly condoning bullying by letting Incognito play football. It's that kind of mentality now. The NFL has gotten so big, it has gotten so public, if you will, that now any little thing that they do can hurt the brand, and they're so worried about making sure that the brand stays clean that football itself is suffering. You see the concussions. You see people suing the NFL because I think it really started when Junior Seau died and they found out it was like brain damage. Junior Seau played football because he loved football and he wanted to play football. So now all of a sudden Junior Seau has this brain problem and he dies. He killed, I think it was suicide. He killed himself or something like that because he didn't know what to do without football. So now the NFL is responsible for everybody deciding that they want to play football. I mean, you signed up for this, and you know what it's going to do. You knew it was a violent game going in. Did you honestly expect you were never going to get hurt? It's football. And the longer this all goes on, it feels like it's going to become less and less like actual football, and it's going to start looking more like a game of tag.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Seau, I think that the gripe with that is, yes, you sign up to play football. You're taking that risk. The NFL doesn't say you have to. I think the problem that a lot of people, and especially the players, have is that I don't think the league it makes so much money, and it just seems like the players don't really see a ton of that profit. And I think it's more of a, again, you could blame Goodell if you want, but the owners are as greedy as they are the greediest 32 people in the world, quite possibly. They are. They don't give back to their players as much as they probably should be. And
I'm not going to make that accusation of Steve Ross, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
there are a few good
I
eggs.
think Woody Johnson. I think Woody Johnson's as dumb of a football guy that gets, but the Jets always find a way to be top 10 in the Forbes most valuable franchises in the NFL. So he makes money. That's great, but you know what? I think the league, again, slow to the dance floor in terms of, helping players after they get out of the game, helping them because the average career is 3 years, helping players transition out of life and helping them get the proper medical care. I think that's something the league was really, lagging on. And I think that things like Seau and, just all of these terrible, terrible incidents that have happened to former players, I think that sort of brought that to light. And going back to the legal stuff, I don't know. Again, I can't really speculate on Ray Rice or Incognito or any of those things. I can't really speculate on who was right, who was wrong. But what I can say is, the NFL was the first league to really sort of get exposed by the social media era. You know what I mean? I mean, like videos. I mean, that was such a serious thing, and that was really the the first time that I can remember where, video and the, viral nature of social media pretty much, was at the forefront of a major case. And I mean, if there wasn't a camera in the elevator, Ray Rice probably gets off. And it's just a matter of, the league has been, exposed by how much access we have to, video and social media. And we can, you can pretty much, if you see Cameron Wake, getting drunk in a club in Miami, I mean, you can document that, and, the Dolphins could find out, and that could lead to, legal repercussions, or, he could get, suspended or cut. It's that easy now. And I think, I think the NFL, people view it as, it's so big, it has such a large platform that, it's expected to set a precedent for things like this. And, I don't know if that's fair, but, the Ray Rice case was a major moment in sports history,
Yeah,
whether you like it or not. And I'm not even talking on the field. I mean, it changed the conversation about domestic violence. It changed the conversation about players' off-field activity. I mean, the NBA has responded, and, MLB is, coming along too. It's just, the NFL was just sort of the first to be put in the spotlight with this case because of the nature of social media. And I'm not saying that's, it's the NFL, deserves all the blame it got, and so does Ray Rice, and what he did was terrible. He's clearly paid the price because he doesn't have a career now. But it's just the nature of the beast now. I mean, when you're as big of a corporation, when you're as big of a celebrity, the cameras will always be on you. I mean, that's why it's like, even if you're not an athlete, anybody, you can always get spotted just doing one thing, and it's, that could be the end of your life. So it's tricky. I mean, do I feel bad for Roger Goodell that it's happening to him? No. Do I think he's done a good job in handling it? Absolutely not. But again, it's, people look to the NFL as sort of this, beacon, like this placeholder where, they have the platform to sort of set a precedent, and I'm not sure that's totally fair.
I agree. Whew. Okay, getting political on PhinManiacs. I don't know how did we get here again?
I think you asked about the decline in football, or just player development, and that's sort of how tail spun.
Yeah, amazing.
I think it was mainly concussions.
Yeah,
concussions segued into the league's thinking, and then Chad wanted Roger Goodell fired. So
there's so much going on in the NFL now beyond just the games that it's kind of hard not to discuss.
There's a lot of
like
issues.
This.
I mean, that's the problem. I said this on another podcast. I think the NBA will be bigger than the NFL in 10 years.
Mark Cuban was right.
I really do. I think he will be. I really do. I mean, I think the NFL, unless they change their mindset, unless Roger Goodell and the owners shift their mindset from just making dollars to, growing the game, making it safer, making the rules better, making it more friendly and, easier to watch for fans, they're going to be in trouble. I mean, look at the NBA. I mean, the NBA is really growing in popularity. Will it happen? I don't know, but I don't know, man. I think the NBA is bridging the gap.
Well, I don't disagree with that at this point. Like, as far as money goes, I think the NFL is always going to have more there because there's just more to it. But as far as just speaking in my neighborhood, basketball is much more popular because A, it's a lot easier to play for yourself, and B, I think it's a lot easier to get into it. And the NFL is trying to make things friendlier. I think that's part of the problem, actually, because they're trying to take away taunting. They're trying to take away hits that to the head and whatever and all that stuff, and they're trying to make it harder to actually hit people, so you have to hit them in a specific location or you get flagged. They're trying to make it more friendly that way. It's not working. Honestly, it's going to come right back down to, do you want to work hard or not? Because back then when NFL was considered good, these players were really, really working hard, and it's going to come down to stuff that I'm not even sure if it can be done anymore. But I don't think we need to talk about this anymore. I think we've gone off topic way longer than we should have. And sorry, Matt, I apologize, Matt, because I didn't know we were going to get into stuff like this today.
It's a good discussion. I mean, it's fun to sort of assess, why. I mean, because it's really, why are people not watching football? This has been, you want to say baseball is America's pastime, sure, but football has been king. So, what's wrong with it? And I'll be honest, if not for the Jets, I don't really watch that much football, and I cover it for a living. I don't watch the primetime games as much as I used to. I'm not as glued to it as I used to be. So it's an interesting discussion to have. I know it's not exactly Jets-Dolphins related, but, it's a change of pace.
It doesn't have to be Dolphins. I like having people from other teams come in to give their perspectives on things because it always Dolphins fans need to know what other teams fans see. They need to see that. Guess what? It's not if you take off the aqua and orange glasses and put on somebody else's, then things aren't quite as bad as we think they are. You said that Woody Johnson is the dumbest sports owner in football. That's exactly what Dolphins fans say about Stephen Ross. That's what they think. Mike Tannenbaum is the worst thing to ever come into the Dolphins room. There are teams somewhere they're saying, no, that would be us. Thank you.
Just go up the road to Jacksonville right now.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into we're gonna wrap this show up very soon, and I want to just thank Matt for coming on. But first, before we go, we have to do some game predictions here. I'm gonna start with you, Chad, and what do you predict for Sunday's game?
Oh, it's a tough one. I think with it being in Miami, I think that's going to help the Dolphins, and they're coming off a bye week, so the Dolphins are really healthy, and so I suspect Adam Gase is going to have some good plays ready to execute. So I do think Miami's with the home field advantage are in a good spot in this game. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's under a ton of pressure, so if he has any difficulties early on in this game, I think it could unravel for the Jets because the team and the fan base just are not behind Ryan Fitzpatrick anymore, and those things tend to disintegrate quickly if they struggle. So I'm going to go with Miami in this game. I don't think Miami's just going to blow the Jets out of the water. I honestly don't think either team's a playoff team, so it's hard to get too excited. But I'm going to say Miami 21, Jets 17.
All right. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm thinking along the same ways. I really like Miami coming off of the bye. I believe is this their third straight home game in 4 weeks?
This is their fourth. This is their fourth home game. This is going to be the last home game before they go back on the road.
Wow. So they've had a lot of consecutive weeks at home. I think that plays to their advantage. The Jets are coming off of a road game against Cleveland. I really like home teams coming off the bye in general. I just think, the Jets they do not look impressive against the Cleveland Browns. And I can't believe I'm saying that. And I picked the Jets to win that game. But, they didn't look impressive for the entire first half, and they woke up and the Browns sort of, they did what the Browns typically do. They fell apart. And I think the Jets are going to have to run the ball. I think you cannot let Ryan Fitzpatrick throw the ball 40 times a game anymore. He's not capable of doing that. Whether Chan Gailey agrees with that is, an entirely different question because I don't know if you've seen, but I'm on the Fire Gailey train. But I think, I think the Jets secondary is, obviously a major concern. I think while the Dolphins don't have a ton of game-breaking talent, I think Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills are more than good enough to beat this Jets secondary deep. If the Jets can run the ball effectively, I think they can pull it out. But I think, I feel like Miami's going to go right at the secondary. And I'll take the Dolphins, and I'll go 23-16. I'll give you a bonus prediction. Kenny Stills is going to have a touchdown of at least 40 yards.
Well, considering Dolphins fans still are not convinced that Tannehill can throw the deep ball, which I don't know why they still think that, that's a pretty bold prediction just based on the overall consensus.
You know what? Ryan Tannehill doesn't have to have a perfect deep ball to beat this Jets defense deep. It might only take a miscommunication in the secondary for it to happen, but I've looked around and picked for these game-breaking receivers who can just bust a big play in a split second. Devontae Parker is very capable of doing it too, but I don't think
he's going to play much.
Oh, is he limited?
He apparently hasn't felt well all year, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe it was too many Fruit Loops.
That's not good. Well, if he doesn't play, that helps the Jets. But they'll, like I said, it hasn't taken much to beat the Jets deep this year. So I'll go Dolphins 23-16. And now if Stills is going to get an enhanced role, I think he'll definitely get a touchdown of 40 yards.
If I'm Gase, I'm definitely attacking the Jets deep. Now for my prediction. Part of me still is very pessimistic because I remember last year when Dan Campbell showed up and suddenly the Dolphins looked like a brand new football team. They beat down the Titans, absolutely clobbered the Texans, who, by the way, my condolences for signing Brock Osweiler to that giant contract, even though I told you so. But anyway.
He stinks.
Who didn't see this coming? Anyway, besides the Texans. The Dolphins, I want to say that the Dolphins are going to be able to win this game just based on the fact that Gase is probably going to realize that Darrelle Revis is not who he used to be. And Darrelle Revis, even in his elite days, Matt, would you agree that Revis could be beat in a straight line foot race?
He could be, but it would have to be the right wide receiver. It couldn't just be some ordinary guy off the streets. Now, yeah, he can get beaten by just about anybody.
So, yeah, that's why Mike Wallace was able to get past him a few years ago, even though Wallace isn't all that spectacular either. So, if I'm Adam Gase, I'm taking at least 3 shots down the field to Kenny Stills. If it's in fact Revis who gets the honor of trying to take down Kenny Stills. So, my guess is that Revis is going to be put on Landry because they need to keep Landry contained, and Tannehill loves him some Jarvis Landry. But if they do put him on Kenny Stills, I would imagine they're going to try and go deep a lot. So my prediction for the game is that Ajayi does not repeat, or he may get maybe like 50, 60 yards rushing, but I'm not going to even dare to suggest that he'll get anywhere close to where he was the past 2 games because, I mean, nothing lasts forever. And if he does pull it off again somehow, then I think he will be. He needs to go to the Hall of Fame right then and there for having.
Right, put him in. Get the statue ready.
Right, like he just surpassed Ricky Williams, folks. The London-born running back. Anyway, I guess my prediction for score is going to be somewhere along the lines of. I'm going to make it 24-20. I'm not going to give the defense that much credit. I think that they're going to get beat by Matt Forte a lot, and Fitzpatrick is going to be able to try to pick on maybe Byron Maxwell because I said this last year, and you didn't necessarily agree with me, Matt, but I think the biggest reason that Fitzpatrick did so well last year was because of Brandon Marshall specifically. And I think that's also why Marshall defends him so adamantly. Because, let me be honest, Marshall had a problem with Chad Henne. Marshall didn't want to go play with Jay Cutler anymore. And Jay Cutler and him used to be bros. And now he's defending Fitzpatrick? It's got to be because he just throws him the ball a lot. That's why he was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I mean, I think Eric Decker had a role too. But, yeah, Marshall versus Maxwell should be fun because Marshall's been talking some smack, I guess, saying that Maxwell holds on every play. So that'll be a fun match to watch.
Maybe for you. I don't think Maxwell can hold him. But anyway. Well, I think we're going to cut this show off right here. We talked a lot of stuff that I didn't expect we were going to, but I guess it's discussions that need to be had. It's social commentary from PhinManiacs, from football fans around the world. All right, so... if you're gonna hear it, you might as well hear it from somebody other than our primary candidates.
That's true. Happy to help you out, guys, and thanks very much for having me. And I'm sure I'll be talking to you guys on Sunday during what should be a thrilling matchup.
No kidding. And then December, you gonna be busy come week before Christmas Eve?
Maybe I'll come down to Miami for that, and we can watch it live or something.
maybe we'd have to go to New York.
It is at MetLife Stadium, so that's true.
The MetLife.
You know what? No, I'd much rather go to Miami in December than New York. So scratch that.
Frozen tundra out there.
That wouldn't be fun. No. Let's plan for Miami maybe next year.
All right, brother. All right. So thank you all so much for listening. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chad, for coming on. And we'll see you all next time for another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast.